Charity is a mentor of many. Her incredible resume includes being a manager at Club Penguin before they were purchased by the Walt Disney Company, where she then held several titles such as manager of production, senior creative lead, lead producer, co-GM, and director of product development at Disney Interactive. She's now the VP of Strategic Partnerships and Experience at Carebook Technologies, Inc., which is an online digital health provider. She's also now the founder of a company called 30 Turtle, which is helping businesses transition and nurture their company culture remotely. Welcome to the show, Charity.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Good to hear. One thing I wanted right off the bat to talk about is I know you're a reader. What have you been reading about lately? What books are you reading too?
So I have been an audiobook consumer as of late.
Okay.
COVID forced me to not want to look at things in close proximity because I spent so much time on my computer for so long. So like reading a book was the last thing I wanted to do, but absorbing information was still a passion. So
Nice. Yeah.
I have been audio consuming. The last one that I finished was The Infinite Game, Simon Sinek's latest book on leadership and having an infinite mindset, which was incredible.
Yeah.
And I am also on chapter 6 as of my walk over here.
Nice.
Chapter 6 of How to Become an Anti-Racist,
Okay.
which is also an incredible read. And yeah, I would say those are the latest two. I mean, I could give you a long list. Oh, and I'm also in the middle of Influence, which is all about how humans influence other humans, from sales tactics to kind of anything, and basically like the psychology or biology or whatever science behind why we respond to certain things in different ways. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, no kidding. Hey, I love that stuff. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
All of that sort of stuff is kind of what commingled into me doing this podcast as passions and stuff like that. So I think talking about Simon Sinek, he is like at the pinnacle of leadership, in my opinion. Super inspirational. Infinite Game. Talk about that a little bit. What have you taken from that?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of my favorite takeaways in that. Infinite Game really builds on Simon's first kind of concept around Start With Why, right? Which was around everyone having a unique and personal why, which is a driver and a motivator in what we do and why we're here on Earth. Was Infinite Game, he really starts to think about a leadership mentality that has a higher kind of collective purpose. So you and I, for example, could be working towards the same kind of collective purpose, still inspired by our why, but it's going to be something beyond us and likely something beyond our lifetime. So something that we know, may or may not change, but something that's worth fighting for and sacrificing for the future of our communities, for the future of, our children, for our business longevity beyond us. So imagine it being a leader who is concerned about, say, the next generation of his or her business versus a leader who is concerned about the stock price tomorrow, right? And making decisions based on a longer term, a longer game. And even the concept of an infinite game versus a finite game is that a finite game is something that has clear rules. It's how to win. So it's a basketball game, any kind of sport, right? Yeah. Clear winner. An infinite game does not have a clear rule set, and there is no winner. So he's saying that in business and also in life, you're not going to get handed the trophy at the end of it and said like, hey, you've won business or you've won life. So having a different mentality around how we look at our business and the impact it has. And then along with that, in a finite game, when you're looking at competitors, and we often use that language in business as well, or just in our lives when we're jealous or comparing ourselves to other people. But he talks about how instead of looking at people as competition, we should be looking through the lens of having a worthy rival, right? So it's not a competitor necessarily, but it is somebody that may challenge us to kind of up our game.
Okay.
And he uses an example of tennis players, right, who have been rivals for years, and that kind of, I guess you could call it competition, but that rivalry has caused them to continue to grow as individual players over time. He himself gives an example of another writer who he used to view as his competitor.
Okay.
And, when his book was doing better on the sales charts, he'd feel good, and when his book was doing worse than the other guy, then he'd feel bad.
Yeah.
But basically, he realized that this person for him was just a worthy rival, and they both, have an experience that he describes in the book, which was quite heartwarming, where they both admitted to each other that there was some insecurity. The other brought out insecurity in them, and that was mutual. And from there, they built this foundation of actually really caring for and challenging each other and befriending each other, even though they're still, you could say, competitors in what they do, because what they offer is very similar. They're also very different. And he jokes that, he realized that people could buy more than one book,
Yeah,
so maybe it's
totally.
okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I kind of like, how do I say this? It's nice to hear that someone with as much success as someone like Simon Sinek still has those insecurities. You know what I mean? And like, you kind of assume that someone who is as far along the success journey like him, right, has figured it all out and doesn't have any more insecurities. And it's almost like you kind of think that getting rid of insecurities is what it takes to be successful, but it's like almost just one of those constant battles, right?
Yeah,
and
for sure.
it's nice to hear that he has those.
Yeah, man, we all do. And I think that, I mean, I think about Brene Brown when I think about that too, a little bit, in the whole spirit of like vulnerability, right? And just being honest about those things and being open about them. Him being able to tell that story in that book gives me permission gives you permission in this moment to be like, it's okay to have insecurities. Just to know his own admitting of that opens a path for others to feel okay about themselves and actually build confidence, right? Rather than pushing down those insecurities that I think, are a daily practice, like any of our daily practices, something that we have to be mindful of, acknowledge when they come up, think through, like, okay, why is this here again? Right? Because often it's something you think you've dealt with. You're like, wow, I thought I was so over this like 5 or 10 years ago, and here it is again.
Back up. Totally.
Yeah.
I remember Tom Bilyeu talked about it in a really good way, where he said one of the best attributes or skills you can learn as an entrepreneur or business owner is the practice of self-soothing, recognizing when those thoughts pop up that kind of don't serve you in a positive way,
right,
and would suppress you into kind of retreat mode, right?
Yeah.
And soothing yourself, right?
Yeah.
So I remember when I heard that, I went down a rabbit hole of CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
Course.
The psychology thing.
Yeah.
And then it just led me down this path to understanding why meditating is so important, right?
Yeah.
And I was always one of those people who almost kind of, I guess, took pride in not meditating. Like, I don't need it. I can be happy without meditating. I didn't really get it, right? And then I listened to another podcast where I think she was a scientist and was very logical about meditation.
Right.
And just talking about how what you're doing is noticing that you're a little bit crazy, right?
So true.
Yeah, you have thoughts that constantly pop in, and what you want to do is recognize that sometimes those thoughts will cascade into feelings, right? And what you can do is practice noticing those thoughts to the point where they don't turn into feelings, right? So like myself, starting a podcast, it's a very vulnerable feeling, right? Yeah. And you're putting yourself out there, and sometimes you're going to show a friend maybe who has some feedback, and immediately when you have feedback, there's a part of my brain that instantly goes back to like high school Jeremy of insecure, and what I've noticed is I can find those moments and calm myself down from them and be like, no, you're not high school Jeremy anymore. You're 28-year-old entrepreneur Jeremy. You're doing the right things. Keep going now.
Yeah, so. And feedback, feedback isn't always criticism too. I think the way we look at feedback through the lens of an entrepreneur is cool. I'm going to listen to that, and then I'm going to take the pieces that are useful to help me make this thing even better. But the pieces that feel like a personal attack, And sometimes it is, let's be honest, it probably is, but
Yeah.
what we choose to do with that is really up to us. And understanding whose voices we're listening to,
Yeah.
and including the ones in our own heads from 17-year-old Jeremy in high school, still voices that kind of play and replay and remind us of things that may or may not be true and may or may not be useful to us now,
Yeah.
like the foundation of limiting beliefs.
Yeah. Yeah, limiting beliefs are an interesting one. Um, do you find yourself like far enough along your career, like do you find yourself with them as well? Like,
Oh my God,
yeah,
yes.
okay,
Oh my God, I feel like limiting beliefs, I for fear this might come out wrong, I'm going to say it anyway.
yeah,
Limiting beliefs are one of my favorite things right now.
yeah,
As
totally,
strange as that sounds, is because I have started to be able to recognize them more quickly than I ever have before. I would say in the last 6 to 9 months, I've really started to dive more into kind of what you were talking about earlier with CBT and how do we deal with our emotions and the underlying belief system of that and what holds us back, which is often ourselves. I try to be aware of limiting beliefs every day. Like what pops
mm-hmm.
into my head, if I feel constrained or if I feel frustrated or if I have some sort of emotional reaction to something, I'm trying to view that emotional reaction as a emotional experience that's related to something maybe deeper. And what is that deeper belief system that I'm holding that is causing that reaction? And it's been as simple as, I would say, probably 4 or 5 months ago. I've always had this mentality of I don't really have a home. Like I never feel like I'm at home anywhere in the world, and with that, this kind of constant striving for a sense of home and freedom,
Mm-hmm.
right? And even when I started, working more in the entrepreneurial world, and it was often, and it often is when you talk to entrepreneurs, around this idea of I want to feel freedom. And that's financial freedom or
Mm-hmm.
freedom to be able to work wherever I want, or just whatever it is, we have this kind of need, and I think it's probably a human need.
Yeah,
But I was walking around with that, and I had just listened to a two things kind of came together for me that day. One was I was taking a course in flow, consciousness flow, when they were talking
cool,
a lot about limiting beliefs, and we actually had a list. Like I have a 2 or 3 page list of common limiting beliefs that I had to clear. And I had to clear like two
mm.
or three a day. And they have kind of a whole methodology around how to clear them. And so I had that in my brain. And then I was listening to one of Oprah's Super Soul Sunday podcasts.
Nice,
And she was interviewing Joel Osteen, who's a pastor of kind of a mega church in the US. And he was saying this idea that whatever follows the sentence I am will come looking for you. So they were talking about
mm.
how, Oprah was giving an example of how she said, I caught myself saying, like, I'm just exhausted. Like, I'm exhausted. And
Mm-hmm.
then this exhaustion was just kind of repeating in her day. And she's like, I'm not going to lie to myself and say, like, I'm energized when I'm actually not. But she said, what I framed it as after I realized this was, I'm waiting for my second wind. I'm waiting
Mm-hmm.
for my second wind. She said, and it came,
Hmm.
And so I love that concept of whatever follows I am will come looking for you. So as I'm walking down the street, thinking about these limiting beliefs, thinking about freedom, thinking about this interview, I had this moment where I was like, I am free.
Mm.
I am free. Like there is no freer person in the world than me walking down the street today. Like what is holding me back? Nothing but me. And it was such a powerful moment to be like, holy shit, like how many other things like this are actually holding me back and making me feel anxious and making me strive for things out of a sense of not being there yet. And I'm a goal focused person, and I like to build, and I'm always going to be creative and striving to some extent, but from what place?
Mm-hmm.
And that was a really powerful moment for me. And yeah, so I'm really trying to check those beliefs all of the time.
What are some of those common ones that like the average listener could dive into a little bit? What are some of those average?
Yeah, it. I'll give you a couple that struck me
Yeah.
because they kind of categorize them.
Okay.
As simple as I don't belong,
Hmm.
or I'm not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
They have some interesting ones around money. I think it depends on how you were raised or where you were raised. It could be anything to, I don't deserve
Mm-hmm.
money, or I'm scared of
Mm-hmm.
having wealth,
Mm.
or,
Why would one be scared, do you think, of having wealth?
there, I heard an interesting example specifically around money from another teacher that I thought was fascinating. And he was saying how we grow up around money really, I guess, forms our view and our relationship with money. And he says, so for example, if you grew up in a home where your primary caregivers, your parents, for example, were always fighting about money and they were
Mm-hmm.
always angry about money. And anytime money came up, it was a source of anxiety or stress or division in the home. Your relationship with money is now to view it as this like potentially scary,
Mm-hmm.
divisive thing, and your relationship kind of like the dog that bites you, right? It becomes this family pet that you're not really sure how you need to act around, and so now you carry
Mm.
that view of money into your adult life,
Mm-hmm.
and it might not be something you're comfortable with. It might not be something or you don't want it. I don't want to have anything to do with it because I saw how destructive it was in my home, as an example.
Mm.
Versus someone who may have grown up in an environment or been around mentors who showed them that money is a very useful tool,
Mm-hmm.
and that having a lot of money wasn't taking away from other people, that there is in fact an abundance of money and they see the energy in that abundance. Someone who has that view and that mindset is going to see and treat money very differently.
Okay.
So even limiting beliefs around how we accumulate wealth, like you have to work hard, like you have to like grind, you have to work your ass off, right?
Yeah.
Is a mentality. It may be a limiting belief that you have,
Yeah.
that there has to be pain in order to have gain, right? Like we have all
Mm-hmm.
these different quotes in our society around
Yeah.
what it means to work or work hard or to be, and there's probably an element of truth, I guess, in any of them. But I feel like one of my favorite quotes right now is from one of my favorite poets, in Q, and he says, "We'll always find evidence for what we choose to believe." And so,
Mm.
when we believe that you have to work hard for money,
Mm-hmm.
and you look around, you're going to see all the evidence you need.
Mm-hmm.
When you believe, like the teachers in this flow course I was taking, that money will come as you're following your highest excitement and as you're doing the things that you're passionate about, and as people see the value in that. That's a very different mindset in an approach.
Mm-hmm. Almost just let go of that need to control, and just accept that it will come eventually if you're
Right.
doing you.
Well, and control what you can control,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's the other thing that is always an interesting tool for me when I'm feeling anxious or I'm feeling like, hey, I need to have control. Like I'm that person who used to just cut her hair every time she felt out of control because it was at least something she could control. And then I'd have to go
Interesting.
and get it fixed because I did a really horrible job.
Yeah.
Or like clean the house like crazy. It's
Yeah.
like if I feel in disarray, I mean, obviously you want your environment not to be in disarray, but it was something I could control.
Totally.
But kind of taking a step back and going, okay, in this situation, number one, what do I want? What do I actually want?
Mm-hmm.
Number two, what can I do to move towards that outcome? What is actually in my control?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's as simple as actually understanding what you want and asking for it,
Mm-hmm.
which can be, again, simple, but very challenging.
Asking for things is hard.
Super
Yeah,
hard.
especially because you think that you want to or you need to do it yourself,
Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Interesting. I think that control is such a central theme in leadership as well, right? And I mean, we've both worked with different level managers in our lives, right? And there's the manager who needs to control everything, which they call micromanaging. And then I've kind of come up with, well, I wouldn't say it's my term, but
You can own it. You can just own it.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But I think that there should be more common knowledge about macro managing, right? Where I think a lot of management don't really know where they're going wrong when they're trying to control everything, right? But what you're actually doing when you're trying to control everything is you're taking away that need for control from your subordinates, from everybody that's working with you, right?
Yeah.
And those are very tricky waters to navigate, right? Where you have to learn when to let go and when to let the other ones go, right? I remember reading it was a book by Ryan Holiday, his newest one, Stillness is the Key. He talks about how he lives on a ranch, right? And there's a neighbor's bull that comes into his yard all the time, right? And if he was to go up to that bull and shoo him towards where he wants him to go, back to his own property, that's not going to go well, right?
No, probably not.
Totally. But if he just sits there and waits patiently and stands on the opposite side of where he wants to go, that bull's not going to get angry. He's just going to kind of naturally go back to where he should go, right? So as a manager, what I saw that as is I managed a very busy restaurant for a long time. And what I noticed is there's often those times where you go up to people and they react like the bull would, right? And that goes against your whole idea of what you think you should be doing, where if you just let the situation go, play itself out, their actions and their whatever you're trying to, the outcome that you want eventually ends up happening, right? But then it feels like you don't have that control. So it feels like you're doing less. So you're doing you're doing more by doing less. And I've found that that's such an intricate thing in leadership, you know?
Yeah, well, I think you're trying to create an environment where your team can thrive, right? And I think to your point about a macro view as a leader, I mean, back to Simon again, is this are you playing the short game or the long game? And how do you create an environment where people can actually thrive, to your point about autonomy and being able to master their own skills and being able to feel a sense of purpose and control and all of these things that we want.
Yeah.
We can only assume that other humans want, right? I think one of the things that happens in organizations, and I see this time and time again, and I've been there, so I understand why it happens, but as soon as we see humans through a hierarchy or through kind of the structure of an organization, we cease to see them as humans. We now see them as subordinates, as team members, as resources, as all these things that we need to control to get this end result that we're responsible for getting.
Yeah.
And even the most personable, like humanity centered, loving person can get into this mindset through the lens of organization, I think, to not see the human side. And I think that's always the interesting balance. And again, back to what Simon's saying, I think if you have a larger purpose within your organization, like, why are we here? Why are we doing this business? At the end of the day, if we stopped doing what we're doing, who would lose, right? Because again, I think businesses are groups of humans helping other groups of humans. The majority, I don't even know. I would love to have a debate with someone on this, but like, I can't really think of a business that doesn't have some sort of human-centric outcome.
Okay.
Right? Like, even if we're 100% focused on the planet, there's a selfish human need, not selfish in a bad way, but like self-serving human need to focus on the planet for our own survival, right? Or, I'm trying to think of anything that wouldn't be.
Well, what about something like Coca-Cola, right? Where that could be viewed as unhealthy, but are you seeing it as that it's providing joy to people?
I'm sure they are.
Yeah, there's pleasure involved.
I'm sure they are.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Cigarette companies would be another interesting one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's a vice to kind of calm nerves or whatever.
Right.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, we get to choose morally and ethically which of these organizations we want to be a part of because
Yeah.
of that end game and purpose. But I really think at the end of the day, that purpose is what allows us to navigate difficult conversations, know how to create an environment where people thrive, like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I always remember at Club Penguin when we were building. I think one of the things that really helped to build that team and that culture was this saying that we had, which was, if it doesn't matter to an 8-year-old, it doesn't matter.
Hmm.
And it's a little bit blanket, I get it, but what it helped us do is anytime we had a decision to make or we had some sort of internal disagreement, it was all about putting the focus back on the end user, which was a kid.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is this going to matter to a kid? And that could really diffuse the discussion or the conversation and focus people back on the purpose of why we were there. So if I didn't like your idea, you didn't like my idea, we were both trying to come up with something creative, we could turn from each other,
Mm-hmm.
turn towards the kid, and ask that question and probably come up with something even better than what you and I had both thought of. And so I think that when we think about organizations and organizational culture and purpose and all those things, some people think, it's, the mission statement's up on the wall and we have these core values, but we never live by them. Well, yeah, it's a problem. We need to live by them because it is in times like that
Mm-hmm.
that they really direct where you're going and can help move through difficult conversations, through arguments, through tough choices. Tough choices like Simon talks about in the book, where you're going to make a choice to cut half your staff, right now so that tomorrow your stock price is great, or you're gonna keep them and you're gonna lose for a couple quarters, but you have a belief beyond tomorrow for how this is gonna help grow your organization. And
Mm-hmm. It's
and
almost like a compass,
exactly, compass.
It redirects you to be more efficient in your meetings, to put out a better product. Yeah.
And to pivot.
Yeah.
Right?
True.
When I think the example of use this example in Canada of CN Rail, right? If CN Rail had said back in the day that we are a people transportation company
Mm-hmm.
instead of a train company, it's a greater purpose, right?
Yeah.
They might have built some of the airlines.
Yeah.
They might have had a more thriving business than they do today.
Yeah.
So when we get too minutely focused on the product that we're delivering versus the bigger picture of why,
Mm-hmm.
It can actually prevent us from the longevity and the opportunity and the innovation that we also seek as we grow as businesses as well. And I would say the same for people, right? We put ourselves in these little boxes of identity around what we do and what we don't do.
Okay. Yeah.
That can really prevent us from exploring new areas and growing as ourselves.
Mm-hmm. That's really interesting. So do you have like a written down charity purpose that you align yourself on, or?
It's a great question.
You don't have to share
No,
it.
no, no,
But
no, no, no. No, I giggle because it's been a process for me.
Yeah.
Because again, listening to voices and how many voices you let in and which ones you listen to, I feel like we are bombarded by a lot of really high quality leadership advice and access to brilliant minds right now. And at the same time, there's a lot. There's a lot going on. And one of the things related to the question is I kept on feeling like everybody was telling me I had to have a why. And I had to know my purpose. And if I didn't know my purpose, I was somehow like, I'm starting to feel like I'm somehow less human, or like less, I don't know, in tuned or woke or like whatever it was, by just like not having this clear purpose. And so it became very frustrating to me for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say over the last year or so, I was just like, I'm kind of going to let go of this need to have a single sentence that sums it up.
Cool.
But to follow in the direction of my excitement and to be aware of the nudges that are coming that help me know I'm on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
And trust my instinct on that. And the other day, actually, after meditation, I was thinking about that again from a purpose standpoint. And I kind of had this, like, I'm going to call it a vision. I kind of had this vision. And it was, I saw the world like a map. And then I saw humanity as tiny little light bulbs or candles. It's like sources of light.
Okay.
And some were shining super, super, super bright, and others were, a little dusty or hidden or not, or struggling to shine. And I just had this overwhelming sense of like, you need to help all the lights shine. All the lights shine. And I could just imagine this world where every human being is shining at the brightest of their capacity. And it was just such a beautiful image to me. And so when I reflect now on, purpose, or I'm trying to align, if I get different contracts or things that I'm, projects to be a part of, I think about that image now and go, is this going to help more lights shine?
I love that.
Yeah.
What do you think is dimming people's light bulbs? Like what is making them not shine? Because like
So many things.
yeah,
Sure.
right? And it's a complicated thing because I know that I've been in a place where I'm not shining.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then I also know that I've been in a place where I'm shining brighter than a light bulb can even handle. You know what I mean? And it's
So
like
bright.
totally. And it kind of brings me back to what we talked about a couple days ago, actually, about like the seed waiting for the right environment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because I think it kind of correlates.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful analogy. That comes from Michael Beckwith, and he was speaking about how within every human there is this like infinite potential and thing, right? Like to be, I don't know how to describe it, but like to be fully oneself and living in purpose and all of those things. But he was talking about timing and how each of these humans is like a seed, and that seed may be tossed on the wind for a while, but as soon as it finds the right soil that it can take root and it can grow, then you start to see that expression of this fullest potential. And it's not about the seed not having what it takes. The seed always had what it took. There was always a rose inside of that seed. It just needed to land in the right place. And I personally can look back on my own journey and feel a little bit, like that seed. And, you pick up this here and this skill set here, and you like this about this. And, I think that's part of the journey. That's part of the journey. And I don't know that I think there's a whole discussion to have around, does it actually, okay, once you find quote unquote that soil, are you planted there forever? Is there still movement, or is the movement then in the growth? The roots going deeper, the flowers growing higher.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because in that journey, sometimes it feels like you're not going to find that soil,
For sure
right?
it does.
And you keep trying,
Yeah.
right? But you're building these skill sets, you're learning new things. Even if you're putting all of this effort and like the grind or grit, whatever you want to call it in, sometimes it doesn't necessarily feel like it's going to happen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
to someone who hasn't found that soil yet, right? Whose light bulb is a little bit dimmer than they would like it to be. What advice would you have for those people?
I think the first step is our own personal awareness. Like, I really do think the I'm gonna risk sounding super cliche here, but the inner work around things we were talking about, our own limiting beliefs, what holds us back, what do we believe about ourselves, what we believe about others, what we believe about our capabilities, play such a role in how we live and what the outcomes are, because again, our belief system impacts our reality in such a huge way. And being okay with also spending some time and asking, but what do I really want? And what do I really want? Not from yeah, maybe it is the type of house or car, material possessions that you're interested in. That's fine. But I said the greatest question is why? Why those things?
Mm-hmm.
And none of those things are wrong in any way,
Mm-hmm.
shape, or form. But why those things? What is it? What is the feeling that I want more than anything? This is where I ran into that realization about freedom, right? If I was to list all of these things that I think would be really great, and then at the end of the day, what did I want to feel? I want to feel safe. I want to feel free. I want to feel loved. I want to feel strong. I
Mm-hmm.
want to feel healthy. And those are really simple concepts, but simple doesn't mean easy to get to.
Totally.
And so I believe that the introspection and the understanding of self through whatever method, through I'm a writer, I love to write, I move through emotions and translate my brain by getting it out on paper,
Mm-hmm.
meditation,
Mm-hmm.
these kind of practices that help us get a little bit more in tune with what's going on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that. And then I think opening our eyes to seeing that there are so many possibilities. Like there are so many people living outside of the status quo and living outside of the norm. And the status quo and the norm often frame our mindsets. And once we see that maybe we want something beyond that, again, we'll find evidence to believe that it's true that there is something beyond that. And you start to see people living in a different way. And it's super inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And then your realm of possibility starts to really open. And then being around people like that, right? Really looking at your environment and going, okay, now is my environment helping me move in the direction of where I want to go, or is it not?
Mm-hmm.
And do I need to shift that too? I'm shifting my internal environment with my mind and how I'm feeling, but I'm also looking to shift my external environment as far as the types of influences and voices that I'm allowing in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that to tune out all the voices so that you're just like listening to one person and that becomes your 100% guru. But I think having the ability to look thoughtfully at the types of voices that you want to let influence your direction
Mm-hmm.
is important.
I find that there's almost direction in your own insecurities. Like I've found as soon as I find that I want to do something, but I'm scared of what other people think, and I'm in that vulnerable space, it's almost like that's when you should do it because
Yeah.
you want to do it internally for yourself,
Right.
right? But you're scared based on other people's opinions, which are really only your opinions of you assuming what they're going to think,
Right.
right? And I think that once you do one of those things, it's just like anything where you build momentum, where you can be more secure with your insecurities, right? Like I think of one simple one, which sounds a little bit ridiculous, but I grew up with curly hair,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I hated my curly hair. And it was a very big insecurity of mine until I was like 27 years old, where I finally was like, you know what? Rock your curly hair. Not many people have curly hair.
Yeah.
Just rock it,
Yeah.
And that only came about because I noticed all of these different patterns of insecurity. And once I got over them, realized that it's not that big of a deal, but it's not easy to A, identify them, and B, overcome them. Right? So
No, that's the real work.
yeah.
Your hair looks great.
Thanks. Embracing what my mom gave me.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's not easy. And I think what you expressed around almost looking at fear as almost a driver. I mean, there's different types of fear, right? There's like a literally scared for my life fear, which maybe let's not follow that one.
For sure. Yeah.
But
I'd agree.
but the one that is like I'm like half nervous, half excited, and then half just like totally scared to do this because of what is the reaction going to be from others, because of maybe I can't, maybe I'm not good enough. Why would
Yeah.
anyone care? For me, it was always like, I always felt like I was supposed to use my voice, whatever that means. Supposed to use my voice in some way, shape, or form. But always in the back of my head being like, nobody's going to care about what you have to say,
Mm.
regardless of the medium,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And there's so many voices in the world. Why would you add just another voice to the noise? And it took me a while to get over that and be like, you know what? Okay. So if it is just another voice to the noise, fine. There it
Yeah.
is. May as
Yeah.
well join in. But yeah, it's not easy, but it is worth it. And
Yeah.
moving through those things, I think, is, I mean, how we grow, right? Growth, muscle growth, any growth, growing pain. It's growing pains. It's not a pain-free process in the sense that it's going to stretch us beyond what's comfortable, and that's where we grow.
Mm-hmm.
And so that uncomfortable, moving into that uncomfortable, moving into the fear. I think Will Smith has a great quote around that. So it's some, I'm gonna totally butcher it, but it's something around like bliss being beyond the fear, right? And so like having to move through that place of fear.
Hmm.
And I too reflect on that. If something comes up that's scary,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, okay, is this actually life and death scary, or is this just like scary? And if it's just scary, then it's like, okay, why do I want this? Why is it scary?
Mm-hmm.
And what do I have to do to just like start walking through it? And I say walking through it because that's another thing that I think I've started to learn, or just starting to embrace, I guess. I started learning a long time ago, but starting to embrace more and more is when things feel uncomfortable and painful, and there's certain stretches in our life where we're transitioning or we're growing, and it's like, it just does not feel any good. You kind of have this tendency to want to either run through it or want to run away from it.
Mm-hmm. Like fight or flight kind of.
Yeah. But I think that I've discovered there's so much rich learning in that, learning about ourselves, learning about the world around us in those situations, that if we can just say, no, I'm just going to walk through this. I'm going to walk through this because I feel like I need to. And I know I'm going to come out the other side because I've been through this kind of cycle before. But what am I going to learn this time?
Mm-hmm.
And entering into that uncomfortable space with a curiosity,
Totally.
knowing that, trusting that because of past experience, it's going to end and you're going to come out stronger, but maybe the amount of strength might be relative to how much you paid attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it reminds me of Mark Manson's latest book, Everything is Fucked. Don't know if I should say that, but I guess
I
it's
said
the
shit
title
earlier.
of the book. Yeah.
Sorry about
No,
that.
it's hilarious. So he talks about how there's what he calls anti-fragility, right? Where there's you can be fragile, where something breaks you. You can be robust, where something can hit you. I think he uses the example of a metal barrel, like an oil drum or something.
Right.
It gets hit, it's fine. It just stays the same,
Yeah.
right? But then there's anti-fragile, which is when there's an outcome based on the impact that you come out stronger from,
Oh, interesting.
right?
Yeah.
So I think that we are like that. Like a classic example is working out. Like you go through the pain
Right.
and you come out stronger. Your body deals with it,
Right.
right? We're very anti-fragile.
Right.
Where I think we're tempted to be robust, where we think that the pain is going to stop us,
Right. Yeah.
but it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But it's hard to learn that it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. That's why analogies are so good. Like I love the barrel, the bull, like all these things we're talking about today. I'm such a huge fan of storytelling.
Yeah.
It's just a good reminder to me about just how powerful stories are
Yeah.
for us to understand, whether they be, stories about things or, scientific rules or theories or experiments or stories of ourselves, our own vulnerability. It's such a powerful tool to be able to share in that way, and hopefully people seeing through your story or through your analogy, something that resonates with them. So it just reminded me of stories, and I like stories.
No, totally. I agree. That's kind of what this whole podcast is about, is trying to get stories from your experience and kind of filter it down and refine it into like a small, what I call a golden nugget, you know? Like I remember when I was managing the restaurant, there was several conversations I would have where I don't know why, but I would just assume that there was nothing to get out of the conversation.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I would almost half-ass pay attention to it.
Yeah.
But then I switched my mindset to being like, what can I learn from this person? And then I would have these conversations that were initially just to build rapport with clients and make them want to come back.
Right.
But then once I started actually digging, then I realized that there was a golden nugget in everybody,
Absolutely.
you know, and I found that there was true power in that, where I learned such powerful lessons from people where initially, based on the way they approached me, I would have assumed they have nothing to say.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that was very humbling.
Yeah.
It was a very powerful lesson.
It's
you know?
huge.
Yeah.
That's huge. I think curiosity is one of the most powerful traits and one of the most important skills for humans to continue to cultivate. It's exactly that, you know.
Yeah,
We make
there's
these
something.
assumptions about so many things. We have fears about so many things. If we're to flip that into a spirit of curiosity and a mindset of curiosity where we just want to learn, and not for any outcome necessarily even, but just to kind of know. And when we get really tied to the outcome, I think that's when we get a little strung up in it all. But if you can approach something like that with a pure curiosity, like, all right, what can I learn from these people? You're going to learn something.
Totally.
And it's not going to be what you expected, which makes that even more rewarding.
Yeah.
Right? That
absolutely.
surprise and delight of like, oh, cool. Imagine if I hadn't even asked that question.
Yeah.
I would have never gotten this cool story or whatever that is.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful.
Yeah. That's why I say in the intro, I think that what I'm trying to do is forge something bigger out of all of these tiny golden nuggets. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's golden nuggets everywhere.
Yeah.
They're in everybody's minds and everybody's
Yeah.
stories and everybody's experience, and you can put them together and create almost a mindset. But the whole mindset is not, I guess, a finite game like
Right.
Simon Sinek talks about.
Right.
It's an infinite game
Right.
where I'm going to take your golden nugget, I'm going to take the next guest's
Yeah.
golden nugget,
Yeah.
and continually evolve the 6
Yeah.
a.m. mindset. You
Yeah.
know, I don't think it's just here and now,
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So.
130 episodes and we have all the wisdom in the world covered.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not going to happen.
Totally, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And
Joe
it's,
Rogan's at like a couple thousand now or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he's
totally.
probably
still
far
loves it.
from done, right?
Yeah, totally.
It's, that's the thing I think too, even with wisdom, and let's even dare to say the word truth, like whatever these things are, these lessons that we're learning and that humanity has been learning over the last however long humanity has been around, we always need to be reminded.
Yeah.
And reminded through a different analogy, or reminded through someone else's experience, or reminded through our own experience. And I don't think we ever stop. I mean, we don't, well, no, we don't really ever stop learning or growing. I mean, we can choose to have a pretty closed mind and try not to, but with the world changing around us, we kind of have to adapt regardless of whether we want to in a lot of cases. But I think to that point about the golden nuggets, it's been really interesting for me to reflect on teachings that I had heard, you know, even as a child, that I'm hearing again now, but through a different voice or through a different lens. And it's making so much sense to me now. And it didn't make as much sense to me then. Or the same type of conversation about the same type of topic with a certain person that doesn't really resonate. And then with another one, and you're having these aha moments for days. And so I think this is really important. And I think the people like you that are bringing another perspective to these types of conversations is really important.
Thank you.
You know, and people could say, "Oh, don't we have enough podcasts in the world?" I don't, not until everybody is hearing things that are helping them shift.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's a good point.
there's
Yeah.
Mel Robbins had a post the other day on her Instagram, which I thought was really cool. Her yoga teacher had come into the class and just said, like, there's someone in the world today that needs to hear what you have to say.
Whoa. Cool. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That gave me chills a little bit, you know?
I mean, even if it's just one person,
Yeah.
you've had an impact.
Yeah.
And that's worth it, especially if you're enjoying the process.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what gives our lives meaning, too, you know, is knowing that your actions have had an impact. Do you know what I mean? On a person or whatever. It's like ultimately what I think we're searching for is to feel like we have meaning and we have purpose, right? And something like that where even if, one person hears this podcast episode and they take one golden nugget, like mission accomplished,
Right.
you know? That's exactly what I'm trying to accomplish.
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully that person is out there.
I'm convinced they're out there.
Cool.
I know it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Do you want to do any self-promoting, anything? Do you know what I mean? You're
Self-promoting.
Yeah, totally. I know that you're starting up a company called 30 Turtle.
I am.
Right?
Yes.
What's that all about? Can you tell anybody?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Okay.
30 Turtle, let me tell you the story behind the name first.
Okay, I was very curious.
Oh, really?
So I'm excited to hear
Okay,
it. Yeah.
good.
It's got a ring to it. Like I like it right
That's
away.
nice, right?
You know? Yeah.
Okay. So, one of my good friends and longtime colleague and I were walking one lunch hour, and we were walking down by kind of a bird sanctuary pond-ish area, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and there happened to be turtles out that day, and so we were pretty excited. I kind of like turtles. I just like any animal, let's be honest. But turtles are, you don't see them that often. So
Yeah.
we started counting the turtles, and there were about 6 turtles out sunning themselves on logs that day. And as we were walking, she told me that when her son, who's like 21 now, was quite young, he would come home at the end of the day, his like school day or whatever that was, and they would recap his day based on the things that he saw. So he would say like, "Mom, I had a 5-dog day," or "I had a 2 dump truck day." And that was his way of,
Amazing.
expressing, or describing his day. And I thought it was so cute. And number one, it was such a like gratitude led way of looking at his day, and yet just so simple. And so we were kind of giggling about that, and I just said, imagine if today we had a 30 turtle day. Like, wouldn't that just be the best day ever?
Totally.
And as soon as it came out of my mouth, I was like, I need to buy that URL. 30 turtle. I really need. I need to do something with that someday.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
it's the URL. I collect them, by the way, URLs. I also own awkwardpeacock.com. If anyone ever needs,
Interesting.
everyone has a good idea for that.
I'll put your email in the show notes and
Yeah.
people can reach out if they want it.
I know it's a winner. It's totally a winner. But with 30 Turtle, when I started moving, I mean, I worked kind of in and out of organizations for a while and working a lot with entrepreneurs and leaders and startups. And as I started doing more like workshops and workshop facilitation, a lot on leadership, a lot on culture, organizing offsites for leadership, and really trying to design experiences that will help bring people together, help people kind of level up in their leadership, have greater impact. I kind of started going like, I really just want to help people, either individuals as leaders or teams, design great days. Like, imagine if you were waking up every day and being like, this is going to be a great day. And at the end of every day, you went to bed and was like, that was a great day.
Wow.
That just feels so good.
Yeah.
And so when I decided to move more into that through coaching, through workshop design, through training, that's where I was like, that's a 30 turtle day. I want everyone to have a 30 turtle day.
Cool.
And that's where the URL is getting used.
That's powerful. I like that.
Yeah.
That's super cool. I think, there's so much behind that, right? Where habits are so key, and you learn to love your habits if they're healthy and serving you, right?
Yeah.
And you can go the other route too, where your unhealthy habits or your non-positive habits can kind of commingle into you not loving yourself as much as you
Exactly.
could, right?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. I know Jordan Peterson talks about oh, it's slipping. Gonna edit that part out. But yeah, anyways, I think that's all I got.
It's
So
good. Well, thank you for having
yeah,
me. It's
absolutely.
fun chatting with you.
Fun chatting with you as well. Guys, if you want to design your day, give Charity a shout. She'll
Design
help you
great
out.
days.
Yeah, have a
Yeah.
30 turtle day every day.
Every day. I love it.
Awesome. Thanks, Charity.
Thank you.
Cheers.